I want you to picture something. You are sitting at a table in a restaurant you have known for 32 years. A restaurant where you know the name of every server. Where the head chef once cried in your arms after his mother passed. Where the smell of the bread coming out of the kitchen on a Friday evening still makes you close your eyes. Now picture your daughter-in-law walking up to you. In front of her friends, in front of your son, in front of God and everybody, and setting a paper plate in front of you. Not a real plate. A paper plate. The kind you use at a backyard cookout. She smiled when she did it. That's the part one still can't shake. She smiled like she'd done something clever. "There you go, Beverly," she said. "We didn't want you to feel left out." Everyone at the table laughed. My son, my own son Marcus, looked down at his food. I picked up that paper plate. I set it back down. And I smiled right back at her. Because I knew something nobody else in that room knew. And before the night was over, they were all gonna find out. My name is Beverly Jean Whitmore. I am 68 years old. I make the best sweet potato pie in the county. And I have never once in my life been the kind of woman who makes a scene. That last part is both my greatest strength and for a long time my biggest problem. My son Marcus married Diane 3 years ago. I tried, Lord knows I tried. I brought food to their housewarming. I kept my opinions to myself about the way she reorganized Marcus's kitchen, throwing out his grandmother's cast iron skillet because it didn't match the aesthetic. I bit my tongue when she started referring to the holidays as our time, meaning hers and Marcus's, meaning not mine. But let me back up just a little because you need to understand one thing before this story goes any further. My late husband Robert, God rest that beautiful stubborn man, and I owned Whitmore's Supper Club for 32 years. It was our whole life. We built it from nothing. A little spot on Clover Street that nobody thought would last 6 months. Robert worked the front of the house, I handled the books and the kitchen relationships, and together we turned it into the kind of place people drove an hour to get to on a Saturday night. When Robert passed 5 years ago, I kept it going for 2 more years. Then my knees started to argue with me, and the business of running a restaurant, the real business, the day-to-day of it, got to be more than I wanted to carry alone. So I hired a general manager, stepped back from daily operations, and became what my accountant called a silent owner. Silent. I always thought that was a funny word for it. Quiet didn't mean gone. Now, Diane's birthday. She had chosen Whitmore's herself. I want you to hold on to that detail because it matters. She chose my restaurant for her birthday dinner without knowing it was my restaurant. Marcus hadn't told her. Not because he was hiding it, but because Diane had a habit of not asking questions about my life that she didn't think were relevant to hers. And apparently the history of my professional accomplishments fell into that category. The reservation was for 10 people. Diane's college girlfriends, a couple she and Marcus were friendly with from the neighborhood, Marcus's coworker Trent, who I'd met once at Christmas and found perfectly pleasant, and me. I arrived at 7. I wore a navy dress Robert had always liked. I was 5 minutes early because I've been 5 minutes early my entire adult life, it's just good manners. The hostess, a sweet young woman named Priya who had worked the front desk for going on 4 years, lit up when she saw me. "Mrs. Whitmore, we weren't expecting you tonight. Do you want me to let Thomas know you're here?" "Not tonight, honey," I said. "I'm just a guest this evening. My son's party, the Whitmore reservation." Priya smiled and led me to the private dining room in the back. The Magnolia Room we'd always called it, because of the wallpaper Robert and I had picked out together in 1994. I was the first one there. I sat down, touched the tablecloth. Real linen, pressed the way I'd always insisted. And I felt, for just a moment, the particular comfort of a place that had your fingerprints all over it. Then Diane arrived. She looked surprised to see me already seated. Not pleased surprised. Just surprised, the way you're surprised to find something in a drawer you thought you'd cleaned out. "Beverly." She kissed the air near my cheek. "Glad you could make it." Her friends filed in after her. Loud laughing, the good energy of women who'd known each other a long time. I smiled and introduced myself and tried to be unobtrusive, which is a skill I have unfortunately gotten very good at. Marcus came in last, a little harried, a little apologetic around the eyes in the way he'd been around the eyes for most of the past 3 years. "Hey, Mom." He hugged me. "You look nice." "Thank you, baby." The seating shook out the way seating at these things always does, organically, which really means intentionally. Diane's friends clustered around her end. Trent and the neighborhood couple took the middle. Marcus sat next to Diane as he should, it being her birthday. And I ended up at the far end of the table, next to an empty chair that eventually held Diane's friend Courtney, who was perfectly nice but spent most of the evening turned the other way. It was fine. I've sat at the end of tables before. Then the bread came out. Now Whitmore's bread service is something special. Always has been. Rosemary focaccia, still warm with herb butter we make in-house. It comes out on a wooden board. It's been the same since 1997 and I would not change it for anything. The server, a young man named Deshaun who was working his way through culinary school, set a board at each end of the table. One near Diane. One near me. Diane looked at the breadboard closest to me. Then she looked at me. Then she picked up the board from her end, brought it down to her side, and set the one near me, at the far end of the table, just slightly out of my easy reach. It was such a small thing. The kind of thing you can't call out without looking petty. The kind of thing that is designed to be exactly that, too small to challenge, big enough to sting. I reached for the bread anyway. I wasn't raised to go hungry on somebody else's account. We ordered. The food at Whitmore's had been consistently excellent since we brought in Chef Alejandro 6 years back. A James Beard semi-finalist who I was proud to say I'd recruited personally. The menu was Southern-influenced, modern, the kind of cooking that respects where it came from while knowing where it's going. Everyone's food arrived on the good china. White plates, wide rim, a small gold W embossed on the edge. Mine arrived on a paper plate. I stared at it for one full second. Deshaun, bless his heart, looked mortified. Mrs. he started. Diane cut him off. Oh, I asked them to do that, she said brightly. Beverly, I know you're always worried about breaking things. I just thought it'd be easier for you. She looked at her friends. She's always so nervous about dishes. Her friends laughed the way people laugh at something that isn't quite funny but they don't want to be the one to say so. Marcus looked at his food. I picked up that paper plate. I set it back down. And I thought, not for the first time and not for the last, about how quiet can be a superpower if you let it. What happened next is the part of the story that Diane has never fully recovered from, and I don't say that with any particular satisfaction. I say it because it's true. About 15 minutes into dinner, Thomas came out. Thomas Reyes had been my general manager for 3 years. Before that he'd been my floor manager for 5, and before that a server who used to make the regulars feel like family. He was the kind of person a restaurant needed at its center, calm, warm, with the particular talent of making every person in a room feel like the most important one there. He was not supposed to come out. I'd specifically told Priya to let me have a quiet evening, but Thomas had a sixth sense about his restaurant, our restaurant, and apparently Priya had mentioned who was in the Magnolia room, and Thomas being Thomas, he wasn't going to let the evening pass without acknowledging it. He appeared at the entrance to the dining room, impeccable in his dark suit, and scanned the table until he found me. His face did something complicated when he saw the paper plate. He recovered fast. Lord, that man is a professional, but I saw it. He crossed the room and bent slightly at my side. Mrs. Whitmore. His voice was low, warm, with that particular weight of genuine respect. I am so sorry, can I get you anything? I want to make sure everything is perfect for you tonight. The table went quiet. Diane looked up. I watched her process the scene. This polished, clearly senior man in a good suit, bent attentively at my side, speaking to me the way you speak to someone whose comfort matters to you professionally. Everything is lovely, Thomas, I said. I'm just here to celebrate. Please don't fuss. Of course. He straightened. He glanced at the paper plate, just once, the briefest flicker, and then he looked at the table with a wide, professional smile. I hope you're all enjoying your evening. Please let your server or any member of our team know if there's anything you need. We take very good care of our special guests. He said special guests while looking at me. Then he left. Diane was watching me the way a cat watches something it can't quite figure out. Who was that? She asked. She was aiming for casual and landing about 15 feet short. That's Thomas, I said. He manages the place. He knows you. Hum. I took a bite of my food, which was, as always, excellent. Alejandro's short rib had won a local award 2 years running, and it deserved every word of the write-up. Diane looked at Marcus. Marcus was suddenly very interested in his water glass. Her friend Courtney, The one next to me, who'd been turned the other way most of the evening, had rotated around slightly. "Do you come here a lot, Beverly?" she asked. She sounded genuinely curious. "I've been coming here for a long time," I said, which was completely true. "It's such a great spot," Courtney said. "We had my parents' anniversary dinner here last spring. The service was unbelievable." "I'm glad to hear it," I said, and I meant it from the bottom of my heart. The dinner continued. The food was beautiful. The conversation was lively at Diane's end. Her friends were funny, quick women, and under different circumstances I might have enjoyed them. Marcus laughed more than he had in a while, which was good to see. Then Deshaun came back. He came to my side of the table first, which was unusual. Servers typically work a table from the host outward. He set something down in front of me before going to anyone else. It was a plate. A real plate. White porcelain, wide rim, the small gold W on the edge. On it was a small complimentary dessert. A miniature version of our signature bread pudding with bourbon caramel. A thing we usually reserved for birthdays and anniversaries for regulars. There was a small card with it. Handwritten. It said, "With our deepest appreciation, Thomas and the Whitmore's team." I looked at it and felt something warm and complicated move through my chest. Diane was staring at that plate like it had said something rude to her. "Why does she get a special dessert?" one of her friends asked. She wasn't trying to be mean. She genuinely wanted to know. "I'm a regular," I said simply. Diane's eyes were doing math I wasn't going to help her with. Not yet. Let her wonder. She'd find out soon enough. After dessert, real dessert for everyone this time, because Whitmore's doesn't do anything halfway and Thomas had clearly made sure the table was taken care of. Diane pushed back her chair and announced she wanted to find the ladies' room. I watched her stop Deshaun on the way out. I couldn't hear what she said, but I recognized the body language. She was asking questions. She came back to the table looking like a woman who had been given information she didn't know what to do with yet. Marcus noticed. He shot me a look across the table. Not a guilty look, more of a here we go look, which told me he knew something was building. Smart boy. He got that from his daddy. A few minutes later, Thomas came back out. This time he approached the table more formally, both hands clasped behind him, the slight forward bearing he used when addressing a group rather than an individual. "I hope everyone has had a wonderful evening," he said, warm and easy. "I want to extend a personal birthday wish to the guest of honor." He smiled at Diane, who smiled back with the uncertain brightness of someone caught off guard. "And to let you know that tonight's dinner has been taken care of." Diane blinked. "Taken care of?" "The bill," Thomas said pleasantly. "Compliments of the house." Diane's friend, the loud, vivacious one named Tamara, who I had actually warmed to over the course of the evening, said, "Oh my God, are you serious?" "Why?" Thomas smiled. He looked at me. A brief, professional, deeply warm look. "We like to take good care of our family," he said. Diane's head swiveled toward me so fast I was surprised she didn't pull something. "Beverly." Her voice had gone very measured. "Why does the manager of this restaurant keep looking at you like that?" "Like what?" I asked. Like you're important." And there it was, said out loud in front of everyone at the table. Not the worst thing she'd ever implied, but certainly the most honest. Marcus put his napkin on the table. "Diane," he said quietly, but she was already past hearing quiet. "I just mean," she caught herself recalibrated. "I'm just curious. It's a simple question, Beverly. How do you know the manager of this restaurant so well?" The table had gone very still. Courtney had fully rotated toward me now. Tamara had her chin in her hand. Even Trent, Marcus's coworker from the middle of the table, was paying attention. I folded my hands in my lap. I thought about the paper plate. I thought about the breadboard moved just out of reach. I thought about 3 years of being managed, minimized, and made to feel like a piece of furniture that didn't match the new decor. And then I thought about Robert. About what he would say. He would probably say, "Beverly Jean, you have been quiet long enough." He would have been right. "The bread recipe," I continued. "That's mine. Robert's mother gave it to me when we got engaged, and I adjusted it over about 5 years until it was right. The rosemary comes from a plant I still keep on my kitchen windowsill. And every Friday Thomas's kitchen staff uses cuttings I bring in. They've done it for years." "Beverly," Marcus started. I'm almost done, I said. I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. I looked around the table, at Tamara, who looked genuinely fascinated, at Courtney, who looked moved in a way I hadn't expected, at Diane's other friends, who were very quiet and very attentive, and finally at Diane herself. Diane, I said. I did not ask them to treat me any particular way tonight. I came as a guest, same as everyone else. Thomas and his team, they just know who I am, is all. They can't really help it. I paused. And I want you to know, the paper plate didn't hurt me because of what it said about this restaurant. It hurt me because of what it said about how you see me. And I think it's time we talked about that. Diane's friends had the grace, and I respect them for this, to give us the room. Tamara stood up, smooth as you please, and said, Ladies, I think I saw a really cute bar situation at the front of the house. Let's go check it out and give these folks a minute. And just like that, the table cleared, and it was just me, Marcus, and Diane in the magnolia room under Robert's wallpaper. Marcus looked like a man who had been waiting for this reckoning for a long time, and wasn't sure whether to be relieved or terrified. Diane looked like a woman who had never once in her adult life been caught genuinely off guard, and did not know what to do about it now. I didn't know, she said finally. Her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. I know you didn't, I said. Marcus should have told you. Baby. I looked at my son. That's on you. I don't blame you for not leading with it, but she's your wife. She should have known. Marcus looked at the tablecloth. I know, Mom. I'm sorry. But here's what I want to say to you, Diane. I leaned forward slightly. Not in a threatening way. In the way of a woman who needs to be heard. Even if I didn't own this restaurant, even if I was just an older lady who came in here every Friday and happened to know the staff, that paper plate would still have been unkind. You hear what I'm saying? Diane was quiet. The point isn't what I own. The point is that I am your husband's mother. I am the grandmother of any grandchildren that might come along someday. I am a person who has shown up for this family over and over again without complaint, without conditions. And I have been made to feel, for the better part of 3 years, like an inconvenience in my own son's life. My voice was steady. I'd had a lot of practice keeping it steady. That's not. Diane stopped. Started again. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. Maybe not, I said. But you did. And I think somewhere, if you're honest with yourself, you knew. The thing about a truth said plainly is that there's nowhere to go with it. You can't argue with it. You can only sit with it. And Diane, for the first time since I'd known her, sat with it. Marcus reached over and took her hand. Then he reached across and took mine. I should have done better, he said. By both of you. I kept the peace when I should have kept the family. That broke something open in me that I had been holding shut for a long time. I didn't cry. I'm not a crier, never have been. But I felt the fullness of what he said, and I let it settle. That's all I needed to hear, I told him. Diane looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time. Beverly. She said my name like she was trying it out differently. I'm sorry. I mean that. She glanced around the room. At the wallpaper, the linen, the gold W on the plates. You built something beautiful here. Robert and I did, I said. It was ours. It still is, she said. That was the first real thing she'd ever given me. Tamara and the girls came back in about 10 minutes later. Tamara had gotten everyone a round of the house cocktail, a thing we call the Magnolia Mule that Chef Alejandro invented as a joke one summer, and became one of our best sellers. And she set one in front of me with a grin that told me she was a good red of a room and had heard more than she let on. To the birthday girl, she said, raising her glass toward Diane. And to the woman who apparently owns the joint. She raised it toward me. Everybody laughed. Even Diane. Real laughing this time. The rest of the evening was different. Lighter. Something had been released. The way a storm clears a summer evening and leaves everything cleaner than before. Courtney asked me about the restaurant's history, and I told her about the early days, the years when Robert and I were barely breaking even, cooking after close to save on labor costs, falling asleep in the car because we were too tired to drive home and just needed 5 minutes. I told them about the night we got our first write-up in the local paper. How Robert had read it out loud at the kitchen table at 2 in the morning and then cried, which he would have denied to his last breath if you'd brought it up later. I told them about Alejandro's first day, How he'd been so nervous he'd dropped an entire tray of soufflés and stood there looking like his life was over, and how I'd put my hand on his shoulder and said, "Start again. That's all cooking ever is." They were good stories. They were my life. Diane listened to all of it, quietly, which was new. At one point she asked, "Did you ever think about selling?" And I said, "Every day for about 6 months after Robert died." And then one Friday evening I came in and I watched the dining room fill up and I heard the kitchen sounds and I thought, this place is still alive because he put his life into it, and I put my life into it, and some things you just don't let go of. She nodded like she understood. Before the evening ended, Thomas came back with a small wrapped box, something he'd disappeared to get during the second half of the night. He set it in front of Diane. "Happy birthday from all of us at Whitmore's," he said. "Mrs. Whitmore asked us to take good care of her family tonight. We always try." Inside the box was a gift card to the restaurant, signed by the kitchen staff, with a note that said, "Welcome to the Whitmore's family. Come back soon." Diane looked at me. "You arranged this," she said. "The box was Thomas's idea," I said. "But yes. Even after." She gestured vaguely at the memory of the paper plate. "Even after," I said. "Because that's what family does. Not because everything is okay, some things aren't okay yet and we're gonna have to work on that. But because I don't give up on people I love just because they've made me feel bad. I wasn't raised that way." Diane hugged me. A real hug. Not the air kiss, hands barely touching hug of the last 3 years. A real one, the kind that means something. I hugged her back. On the way out, as people were getting their coats and saying their goodbyes, Marcus fell into step beside me. "You okay, Mom?" "I'm better than okay," I said. "I'm sorry I didn't." "Marcus." I stopped walking and turned to face him. This boy. This man. With Robert's eyes and his grandfather's stubbornness and a heart that was bigger than he gave himself credit for. "I know. We're going to be all right. All of us. But you gotta promise me something. Anything. Stop keeping the peace. Start keeping the family." He pulled me into a hug, right there on the sidewalk in front of Whitmore's, and I felt him exhale like he'd been holding his breath for 3 years. "I promise, Mama," he said. I patted his back. "Good. Now take your wife home and call me Sunday. Here's what I want to leave you with. I am not telling you this story to make Diane out to be a villain. She's not. She's a woman who didn't know better, and when she did know better, she chose to do better. That counts for something. That counts for a lot. I'm not telling it to make myself look powerful. Whatever I've built, I built because I showed up every single day for 30 years and loved what I was doing. That's the whole secret. There is no other secret. I'm telling it because somewhere out there, there's someone sitting at the end of a table feeling like they don't belong. Feeling like the person they raised looks right through them. Feeling like everything they built doesn't count because nobody in the room knows it exists. And I want that person to know you don't have to make a scene. You don't have to fight. You just have to know who you are. You just have to sit at the table, any table, paper plate or china, and know all the way down in your bones what your life has been worth. Because nobody can take that from you. Nobody. This Sunday Marcus and Diane are coming to Whitmore's for brunch. She called to ask if I'd sit with them. Not at the end of the table. Right in the middle. I told her yes. I told Thomas to make sure the breadboard was in the center. And I pressed a fresh sprig of rosemary on Friday morning and brought it in myself. Some things you just don't let go of. Before you go, subscribe to Grandma Diaries for more heartfelt stories and don't forget to tell me your city name in the comments below. I would love to know how far Grandma's story has reached around the world.